Hola, hola, mi gente. Today we're learning about the Texas legislature and the behind-the-scenes process of how a bill becomes a ley. Let's get started. Like the U.S. Congress, the Texas legislature has two chambers, the House and the Senate. There are 31 senators and 150 representatives. The Senate is often, and currently, more solidly Republican than the House, which tends to be more moderate. The House and the Senate are broadly responsible for writing, filing, debating, amending, and even passing legislation that may eventually be turned into law here in Texas. Now let's take a look at some of the key figures in the legislature. First up, our governor. The governor is really only involved in the very end of the legislative process, where he can turn bills into law or veto them and send them back to the legislatures. Next, we want to mention the committee chairs. Each committee within the legislature has a chairperson, who is chosen by the leader of the chamber. They decide when the committee meets and which bills are to be considered in each committee. Another key person is our lieutenant governor. They are elected by Texans during regular elections and are the leader of the Senate, holding power over procedures and the committees. Lastly, we want to mention the Speaker of the House. They are elected by fellow representatives and decide which representatives participate in which committees, which can hold significant influence on which bills are brought to the legislative floor. Now let's look at a couple more things, the timeline of the 2023 session and the timeline of how a bill becomes la ley. Tuesday, January 10th, 2023 is the first day of session where members are sworn in. In mid-January, during the first week or so of session, members vote on rules and add amendments. These are rules the members will be expected to follow so they can sometimes influence legislation. From mid-January to early February, the committee assignments are made. The 60th day of session on Friday, March 10th is the day when bills can now be heard out of committee, and it is also the deadline for filing any bills. And this leads us up to Monday, May 29th, which is the last day of the 2023 Texas legislature session. Lastly, let's take a quick look at the timeline of a bill. First, it starts off with writing and filing the bill. This leads to referral to committee. The bill is first read with a short description in front of the whole chamber in what is called the first reading. The bill will then be referred by the Speaker or Lieutenant Governor to an appropriate committee within the chamber where it originated. This leads to the second reading. The bill is read with a short description in front of the chamber. Members can propose amendments which must be approved by a majority of the legislators present. Once it makes it to the third reading, the bill is read aloud again in front of the chamber. It is more difficult to make amendments at this stage, though it is still possible. If the bill receives a majority of the votes during this third reading, it passes. At this point, the bill is sent to the opposite chamber where it follows the same steps. If it passes in the other chamber, it is sent back to its original chamber with any amendments or changes included. If that version is agreed to, it will be passed on to the governor. Within 10 days of getting a bill, the governor has to sign it, veto it, or let it become law without signing it. And through all of that, that is how a bill becomes la ley. It's important to remember that none of this happens without our voices letting lawmakers know what priorities need to be addressed in our communities. This Texas Leg session, get involved by contacting your lawmakers and staying educated on what's happening.